Hello and welcome to the Life Sketches channel. My name is Emma. I am a 34 years old, well-groomed and attractive woman with white skin, slightly chubby, 1.78 meters tall, curvy, well-groomed, and attractive. I would like to share with you my confession about being torn between my husband and his best friend, and how I came to be in this situation. I hope you will give me some ideas to get out of this rut. If you are ready, let's dive into this deep and complex journey together. That day was just an ordinary Tuesday. Until that afternoon, until my husband gave me some news. My husband had been offered a week-long business trip abroad. I was a little nervous about being home alone for the first time in years. I didn't know what I would do without him for a week. Jesus packed his suitcase, kissed me, and smiled cheerfully, promising to call me every evening. And I convinced him on the doorstep to give me a gift that would last him for a week while he got ready to leave. He was with me for 5 minutes, and then he left. And then our house suddenly felt too big and too quiet. The first few days were uneventful. I worked from home, watched TV, and took long walks around the neighborhood. But on day 3, it was just a 5-minute affair on the doorstep, and I started to feel a stirring inside. That day, everything changed. That day, I had made a lot of videos for my internet posts, and I was walking around in a sexy mini evening dress that I had put on for publicity. I was tired. That evening, I was sitting on the couch, sipping a beer in the outfit I felt so sexy in, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I felt a sense of uneasiness with a slight curiosity. When I opened the door, I found Sebastian, Jesus' best friend, smiling with a bottle of wine in his hand. "Hi, Menge. I was in the neighborhood and I was worried about you. I wanted to check on you," he said casually, and knew it. Jesus was away. It can be a bit difficult to be alone. Sebastian and Jesus had been friends since high school. Their bond was a beautiful friendship that had stood the test of time. We all hung out together from time to time, but Sebastian and I hadn't spent much time alone. She was always with Jesus, so we hadn't had a chance to get to know each other deeply. Anyway, when I saw Sebastian at the door, I got over my surprise and said, "Oh, thank you. You really didn't have to do that," I said. He shrugged as I invited him in. "I'm just being a good friend. Don't overthink it," he said. Meanwhile, "I didn't disturb you, did I? Were you going out? You look so beautiful and so sexy," he said. And I said, "No, I was just wearing these dresses for an internet promotion." "Thank you for the compliments," I said. After all, Sebastian was like family. We sat down, had a glass of wine, and talked about work, our mutual friends, and how Jesus was working while traveling. The conversation somehow flowed. The conversation went very well, and I realized that I had laughed so much for the first time in days. Sebastian had always been an attractive man, but I had never paid attention to how sincere and funny he could be. Time went by so fast that day. I had lost track of time, and we were still in deep conversation. I hadn't had such a pleasant conversation with anyone in a long time. As the night wore on, I could see Sebastian looking at me with a different intensity. As we sat there, I didn't notice that my skirt was open, a little bit drunk. He kept looking between my legs. He was looking me up and down. He was right. He was looking at a beautiful woman like me, and I looked really good in that dress. And my skirt was open. I had no underwear underneath. There was nothing strange about him watching me, but his gaze was different. At that moment, I felt something change in the air between us. In the air between us. With a momentary realization, I saw that he was sweating slightly as he was looking at me. I started sweating too. It suddenly occurred to me that this could be a figment of my imagination. After all, he was Jesus' best friend, and I am Jesus' wife. Sebastian would never cross that line, would he? I quickly changed the subject and said it was time to call it a night. Sebastian smiled, thanked me, and left without hesitation. Suru. When I closed the door, I couldn't shake the strange feeling that hung in the air. I shouldn't have felt this way. I shouldn't desire him. It was wrong to feel anything like that. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling. The evening with Sebastian was on my mind more than it should have been. I told myself it wasn't the right thing to do, that the company of a friend at a time when I was feeling lonely could only have triggered the situation. Still, there was that little voice in the back of my head that kept repeating that exchange of air between us. During the day, I threw myself into work, trying to escape these thoughts, but they would come back when I least expected them. When I was making coffee, or when my eyes drifted to the couch we had sat on the night before, what really bothered me was that I thought so much about Sebastian. Well, most of the time that I wanted him. I'd known him for years, always in the background of my life, just a friendly face. So why was I noticing him differently now? In the afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore and called my best friend Diana, the only person I knew would listen to me without judgment. Sebastian came by last night, I began in a casual tone. He said you would... Sebastian? Jesus' friend? What for? He asked, immediately curious. Just to check up on me, I guess. We had a few glasses of wine and chatted, and of course I was wearing that sexy outfit I was promoting on social media yesterday. She looked beautiful. Diana paused. But? She asked. I sighed. I don't know, there was a moment between us that I didn't expect. Nothing happened, but I felt like something did. It was a moment when I felt an overwhelming desire and longing for him. Diana was silent for a short while. And what did he do? While you were half naked in front of him, giving him a little cleavage? Pretty much nothing, I said. I just saw him watching me and I noticed he was sweating a little. It was a quick moment. That's the thing. Nothing specific happened, but there was something unspoken that we were both aware of. Diana thought. It's a difficult situation. After all, she is Jesus' best friend. Maybe the wine was just too much, and the way you were yesterday, combined with your longing for your husband, made you feel this way. Don't think about it too much. Maybe, I said, but deep down I wasn't convinced. I spent the rest of the day trying not to think about Sebastian, but he was in every corner of my mind. It was ridiculous. He was just being a good friend. I was overthinking because of my loneliness and the needs I was in. He took my hand in his. That evening, while I was eating dinner alone, I received a message on my phone. It was from Sebastian. Last night was very nice. You were so beautiful and so nice to talk to. Thank you. I hope I didn't disturb you. I looked at the message and I wasn't sure how to reply, so I didn't think much about it. Thank you. It was very good for me too. The next day passed with a strange energy inside me. I kept thinking about what I was doing and what I was preparing myself for. Was I stepping into something I couldn't control, or was it all just in my head? At home, I was full of excitement, as if he was coming again, and I wanted to prepare for him. I didn't know if he was coming. It hadn't been discussed. But deep down, I wanted him. I craved him. I put on the sexiest clothes I had in the house. I chose the sexiest lingerie underneath. I smelled nice. I put on nice makeup. And I prepared myself to wait for him. And it really happened. That evening, Sebastian came again. This time with a nice Chinese meal and a bottle of red wine. We sat at the kitchen table, and as we ate, we talked like the night before. But this time, the energy between us was much more intense and different. Every smile, every look felt heavier. He was looking me up and down with his eyes. He couldn't keep his gaze off my breast as he picked something up from the table, and I couldn't take my eyes off his muscular body. It was as if we were both circling around something we didn't want to say. At some point, I realized Sebastian was staring at me a little longer than usual. My heart started to race. My insides were flowing warmly into him. I was totally turned on. I wanted him so badly, but he was my husband's best friend. Nothing would happen, right? We were just friends. This is ridiculous, I said to myself, trying to calm myself with guilt by looking away immediately. He's my husband's friend. Nothing will happen. But no matter how much I tried to tell myself that, I was drawn to the idea of letting something happen. My mind was moving one way, my body another. I was practically flirting with him later that night. We felt that what had happened between us the night before was still there. We tried to cover it up with small talk and casual conversation, but the tension was undeniable. And then, without thinking, without planning, I asked, "Have you ever wondered what would happen if we didn't depend on others?" Sebastian looked at me, surprised but not shocked. He paused for a moment, then answered in a quiet voice, "I've thought about it, and I've been thinking about it for a very long time." It's not a new thought. I didn't expect this answer. My heart sped up. It was a strange mixture. I felt both excitement and panic. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I don't know why I said something like that." Sebastian shook his head. His expression was soft but serious. "No, don't apologize. I felt something too, but I don't want to spoil anything. You and Jesus, it's sacred." His words touched me deeply. I realized what a dangerous line we were on the edge of. I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "Yes," I whispered, "I love Jesus." Sebastian took a deep breath, leaning back. "I know and I respect that, but I can't lie. Sometimes it's hard to be around you. There's a connection I can't deny." We sat in silence for a long time, both of us reflecting on the reality of what had happened. We had realized something we hadn't wanted to realize until then, and there was no going back. Sebastian stood up. He looked at me one more time as he prepared to leave. "I have to go before I make a mistake." I nodded, unable to speak, but he didn't leave. He came closer to me. He wanted to say goodbye, but I hugged him. This hug lasted too long. I didn't want to let him go. I wanted to pull back, but I didn't. And in that warm moment when our eyes met, our lips locked, I was breathless. It was a moment of excitement. He began to run his hands over my body. The touch of his hands on my hips took me in his arms, like a bird pursuing a ghost. Sebastian carried me around the house, his lips moving from my neck to my chest and lower. I was out of breath, I was flying through the air, and at that moment he ripped my clothes off me and dropped me on the couch. His lips were all over my body, moving from my breasts to my stomach and down, filling me with a happiness and passion I hadn't felt in years. His muscular body and warm skin, combined with the dexterity of his hands, transported me to another world. That night, it happened. We were together for hours. I cheated on my husband with Sebastian, my husband's best friend. Yes, it shouldn't have happened, but what Sebastian made me feel, the desire I felt, overshadowed everything else. At least, the more important things were not really comparable to my happiness. His lips were all over my body, leaving Carter whispering to my husband all over my body. It felt so good. After that moment, I felt both guilty and strangely satisfied. In the morning, the weight of what I had done shook me for a moment. But above all, I wanted Sebastian again. I wanted to relive this forbidden experience with him. When my husband returned from his business trip, nothing was the same anymore. Even when we went to bed, when I was with my husband, all I could think about was Sebastian. When I was being intimate with my husband, I was actually imagining Sebastian's touch in my mind. This was destroying me. On the one hand, I loved my husband and I wanted to be faithful to him. But on the other hand, I couldn't forget Sebastian's touch and the way he made me feel. The desire to see Sebastian and be with him was uncontrollable. I would invite him home under various pretexts, and when my husband was away, I would be with Sebastian. One day, I invited my husband and Sebastian to dinner together. I put a sleeping pill in my husband's drink. While he slept soundly, Sebastian and I had sex in our bedroom. At that moment, I knew how wrong I was doing, but I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop wanting him. I now found myself in a complete predicament. I was caught between my husband and his best friend. I knew it was a bad thing to do, but I felt no remorse. I wanted Sebastian, and the moments of passion with him brought excitement and energy into my life. But I also knew that this situation was unsustainable. I don't know how to stop myself, and I don't know how to get out of this situation. Should I talk to my husband about it? Should I stop making out with him? Or should I continue to keep everything a secret? Yes, this is my story. Give me some advice, please. What should I do? Should I talk to my husband about it? Or should I go on with my life like this? Thank you so much for listening to my story. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is very important to me.